train your Gavin. Read those books in a blink, oh yeah. Grab yourself a hot drink cause you're watching How to Train Your Gavin.
Yep, that's me.
Hey everyone, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I want to talk about middle grade. Shocking absolutely no one. This is going to be a bit of a sort of sit down chat with a hot beverage to talk about middle grade in general and sort of the misconceptions of middle grade that I see a lot of on Twitter, booktube, because middle grade is my favourite and I will defend middle grade until the day I die. So I do want to talk a little bit about middle grade in general and kind of tips if you have sort of fallen out of love with middle grade but you want to get back into reading middle grade. Because if you don't want to read middle grade, that is absolutely fine, you know, I'm not forcing this on anyone. But this is a video for people who would love to get back into middle grade and maybe to educate some on the misconception of middle grade. So whenever somebody tells me that they don't read middle grade, I usually ask, well, do you watch Disney or Pixar or any sort of family-friendly movie? And usually the response is, oh yeah, I love Disney, and I mean, who doesn't? So then my response is usually, well, why don't you like middle grade? And that usually stops people and they're like, oh yeah, I guess. There are genuine, legit reasons why people don't read middle grade anymore, and I'm not sort of arguing against people who don't really want to read middle grade. That's absolutely fine. That's your prerogative. But if you do genuinely love to watch Disney movies or anything like that, then there's no reason why you shouldn't enjoy reading middle grade. So maybe ask yourself, why do you still love to watch your favourite Disney movies from childhood? And you will see that there is a really good correlation with middle grade. So I know for a lot of people, middle grade is what got people into reading in the first place. You know, I still love middle grade. I never fell out of love with it. I read a lot of books when I was a kid and I still read those middle grade books today. I'm still Jenny from the block, you know, I used to have a little, now I have a lot thanks to middle grade. I mean, that's a bit of JLo wisdom for you. But you know, reading middle grade is exactly the same as you watching your favourite childhood movies. It still has the same childhood wonder and whimsy that you would have grown up loving. And I think, especially in this day and age, you will really need to find ways to rekindle that passion and the childhood whimsy that I think a lot of people feel like they grow out of, but I don't think anybody really does. I think everybody has in their heart somewhere longing to return to childhood or to sort of, not exactly return to it, but to remember how great it was for us back then and just how we didn't really have many cares as we do now as adults. It's really nice to dive into a middle grade and forget about the world for a second. And unlike YA and adult, middle grade can be read by everyone. Middle grade doesn't discriminate by age. You could be a 5-year-old, you could be a 55-year-old, and you can read a middle grade book and still fall in love with the words on the page. I know it might feel like a bit of a step back for a lot of people because when we're reading middle grade, it's because we're learning to read and then we just keep advancing as we grow up. We sort of want different things. We want to read more. And of course, the language is a lot more, well, I'd say simple in middle grade, but that's not always the case. There have been so many beautiful middle grade books that I have read that have surpassed so many adult books. The language is easier to read, but that doesn't mean that the words on the page don't mean as much as an adult or a YA book. In fact, you could probably learn so much more from still reading middle grade. I know I do. There's still so many life lessons that I still take from a lot of the middle grades that I still read, a lot of new ones I discover every single year. So don't assume that just because it's middle grade that it'll be too easy to read, because I mean, to be fair, a lot of middle grades are really easy and quick to get through, but don't we need that just to break up our life a little bit? Isn't it nice to just be able to sit back and read something and really be lost in it, that it feels easy to read and it feels easy to fall into that world? Don't assume that middle grade is just for children. So a few tips, you know, just to help you sort of kickstart your reading with middle grade. If you are an adult now and you're like, I do want to read it, but I kind of don't want to go back on my reading taste or whatever, don't worry, I do have a few tips that I would love to share with you just to open your mind a little bit more about it. But I mean, firstly, just don't assume that it'll be taking a step back if you read middle grade. As I mentioned, the prose in a lot of middle grades are some of the most beautiful prose I've ever read. Don't believe anybody who says that middle grade doesn't count or that it's way too easy to read, that reading an adult book is worth 2 middle grade books. I mean, that's just not true. If you look at how influential a lot of middle grade is for a lot of people who grow up, you will say that in fact one middle grade could change somebody's life, especially for the better. I mean, I'm sure you have something that you hold on to from when you were a child Growing up, I know, for example, Harry Potter has defined a lot of us, especially for this generation, and it still continues to do that. It still inspires so much love and warmth towards reading that I think a lot of kids forget about as they're growing up, and there's so many different gadgets and toys that they can play with. It's really nice to see something that will get a child into reading. You know, remember, we were all children once, and those books that we read when we were younger, you may not think it, but they do define us still to this day, and especially when we think about our reading tastes. I'm fortunate that I have a platform where I can talk about how much I love middle grade, and a lot of the books that I love that I've read that are middle grade, and somebody's read something on my recommendation, or the amount of times I've heard somebody say, you know, I forgot how much I love middle grade and I love it again, and oh, that is the best feeling in the world. And I constantly say how people are, and I wrote this in my compendium for Believathon, that a lot of people are surprised by how much they love middle grade when they read it for the first time as an adult. But it's the best feeling in the world when people I see are giving middle grade a chance. You don't know what kind of stories you're going to be missing out on, because whether it's YA, adult or middle grade, it's still a story that you will be able to relate to. It's something that you might read and it could end up becoming the best book you've ever read in your life. You know, if you give it a chance, it could end up teaching you something about the world today that maybe you've missed from reading an adult or YA book. But we must never give up on a story or a book just because it's aimed at children. I don't really think middle grade, or at least good middle grade, is truly entirely aimed at just children. Middle grade is aimed for absolutely every single reader at any age. That is one of the reasons why I love middle grade so much, is because of how much it really speaks to a lot of people who can just take some why am I crying? But one thing I will say, I mean, my first tip is don't underestimate middle grade. Don't underestimate how important they can be for anybody else, for you. I mean, please don't look down on somebody because they read a lot of middle grade. I think after a certain point we shouldn't be looking at reading levels or anything like that. It should all be just one, especially with middle grade, because I really do believe that a lot of people are missing out if they don't give it a chance. I love it when people are surprised by how much they love it. And as I said in my compendium, but I feel like the older we get, the more we need middle grade. Just because we're growing up doesn't mean that we have to ignore that part of ourselves, because it is sort of ignoring a part of yourself that really craves that childhood whimsy that I feel like we never really wanted to lose, but we've had to growing up. And middle grade is a portal back to that feeling of wonder, of whimsy and magic, and just knowing how incredibly beautiful and informative and influential middle grade is. I would hate for somebody to miss out on that. And so many middle grades are filled with some absolutely beautiful quotes as well. There are so many from, say, for example, Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne that I think a lot of people still refer to this day, even as adults. Even if they've never read Winnie the Pooh, they will know the quotes from Winnie the Pooh and just be so inspired by them. There is one by J.M. Barrie where he says, "The moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it." Don't lose that ability to fly. Don't forget about the magical world of middle grade and think you're too old for it. Nobody's too old for middle grade. And continue to be surprised by how much it will inform you and entertain you. I think that's the main thing with middle grade, is that it can be whimsical and magical and wonderful and still teach us so much. Now, I've mentioned this sort of book a lot, especially when it came to the first Believathon last year, but that is the Why You Should Read Children's Books Even Though You Are So Old and Wise by Catherine Rundell. This is a fantastic essay on why you should still be reading children's books at an older age. So the quote that I absolutely love, and I want to repeat it here just in case you've not seen any of my Believathon videos. This is the quote that I think everybody should read. So Catherine Rundell does say in her book, "But there are times in adult life, at least in mine, when the world has seemed blank and flat and without truth. It's in those moments that children's books for me do that which nothing else can. Children's books today do still have the ghost of their educative beginnings, but what they are trying to teach us has changed. Children's novels, to me, spoke and still speak of hope. They say, look, this is what bravery looks like. This is what generosity looks like. They tell me through the medium of wizards and lions and talking spiders that this world we live in is a world full of people who tell jokes and work and endure. Children's books say the world is huge. They say hope counts for something. They say bravery will matter, wit will matter, empathy will matter, love will matter. These things may or may not be true. I do not know. I hope they are. I think it is urgently necessary to hear them and to speak them. And I think what we need now most of all is hope. And reading middle grade still to this day instills me with hope. But if you are an older reader who is looking for a way to really start reading middle grade, then I will say just know your genre and work from there. So if you predominantly love YA fantasy or adult fantasy, look for the popular middle grade fantasies and work from there. There are a lot of undiscovered hidden gems in middle grade fantasy and every middle grade genre. So if you love contemporary, there are tons upon tons of middle grade contemporary that you will enjoy. Test out the genre that you love and branch out from there. There is a lot of help online and I love giving recommendations, or at least trying to help through Believathon or through my channel. And I'm trying to read as much as I can so that I can give really good recommendations to help start you out. I've only really started to read middle grade contemporary last year because I'm not the biggest contemporary reader, but there are some middle grade contemporaries that have made me cry and have just really touched upon something in myself that really awakens the childhood self in me, but also informs my current adult self. And obviously there's no right or wrong way to get into middle grade, and of course it still might not be for everyone, but I would say lastly to go in with a very open mind. But if you go in with at least an open mind, if you open up your imagination to it, then there is no reason why you can't enjoy something that is written for all ages. They're not just written for children, they are written for all ages. As long as you unlock your imagination for it, there's no reason why you can't get immersed in the world. And there are a lot of fantastic middle grade authors who have the most beautiful prose that I think a lot of people will still enjoy even as an adult, as a child. And just don't think it's going to be too young for you. Don't go in with that kind of mindset. There's no shame in remaining young at heart. And I think that's fundamentally a huge part of my personality. I could imagine myself without it. So like Peter Pan, I think there's a part of us that just doesn't grow up. And it doesn't want to grow up, and we shouldn't let it grow up because there's still so much that we can take from being children, and that part is just the most magical of all. And the huge part of why I named my Believathon Believe in the Impossible is that there are a lot of things that seem impossible to us, but children's fiction, oh my god, it makes you believe in all of that. It makes you believe in magic again, and it makes you believe in whimsy and that anything is possible and that you can still be who you are and not feel ashamed for it. But there's also no shame in trying middle grade and not enjoying it. It's entirely up to you. Every single person's reading journey is different, and just as long as you give it a chance and you don't have these misconceived preconceptions of what middle grade is and what it means to people, then it's absolutely fine. But most importantly, have fun with middle grade. They can engage you in ways that other books can't. But I think that's all I have to say on the middle grade front. There is obviously so much about middle grade to love, and there are so many amazing middle grade books to discover. Don't miss out on what could be the best story you've ever read just because it seems like it might be too young for you. Middle grade is not just for the young, it's to be enjoyed by absolutely every single person on this planet, and if you give it a chance, who knows? So thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope that I'm able to open up conversation about middle grade, especially on BookTube and Book Twitter or any sort of book community, because I think there is just so much to love about it, and I think it needs to be talked about a bit more. That is my goal, to take over the world with middle grade. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!